talking about moving from point A to B. Most people ski a more direct route, and this is a situation where they're putting brakes on here, they're putting the brakes on here, brakes on here, brakes on here, and here. So they're going straight, flipping the skis to the new edge, going straight, flipping the skis, and it's more like direct lines connected by braking periods. When we talk about making round shaped or carved turns, we break the turn down into really 3 different phases if we're making completed turns to control our speed. So as we're coming into the turn, here we've got momentum carrying us into the turn and allowing us to put pressure onto the ski early in the turn in what we would refer to as phase 1 of the turn. As we turn into the fall line, this would be the acceleration phase of the turn. We're going to pick up speed because we're not using the skis for brakes. The ski is going to accelerate into this area of the turn. We define that as phase 2 of the turn. And then as we turn out of the fall line, we're going to find that our momentum lines up better with gravity, better in the sense that they combine and creates more load in this phase, phase 3 of the turn. So the load of our turn is highest in this area of the turn. Third phase of the turn is the highest load in our turn. Okay, so when we're talking about the biomechanics and how the body works, we mentioned before that we have this idea of pronation and pressing in and pressing into the tongue of the boot, which we didn't actually mention yet, but we will as we go on. But the idea of being shorter puts us into a weaker position. Yet I notice that many people, as they come into this turn, are always thinking about sinking and pressing into the front of the boot. We would think about this if the load is going to go highest in the third phase of the turn, and I were to give you a choice of being lower in this position or taller in this position, I think most people, to deal with the load, would realize that the taller position would be a stronger position to be in. So now, and the example that I would give is this. I've demonstrated this to a lot of people, and most people pick a certain answer here. And the way to look at it is this. If I was going to go to the gym and I was going to stand in that power rack and someone was going to load 200, 400, whatever number of pounds on me. Now, the goal here is not to move it or to resist in moving it. The goal here is just to hold it for a couple of seconds and then the weight's going to be taken off. I would give you 2 choices as to how you want to be when the weight is put onto your shoulders. And I'm calling the weight as being the G-forces of the turn. At the highest level of G-load is going to be into this area of the turn. That would be where the most weight would be that we had to hold. So if I started out with, remember we talked about a supinated, countered, long position, put the weight on, 1, 2, 3, and take the weight off, or the other position of pronation. If I'm in this position and you put the weight on, 1, 2, 3, which is the easiest alignment for you to resist the force? And I think almost everybody would realize that pressure on the ball of the foot, resupinating the foot into that lever, long leg, opened ankle joint, open knee joint, so that I'm carrying the weight on my skeletal structure, I can hold the weight with a lot less effort than if I pronate and push into the tongue of the boot and start in that position to be when the load goes highest. There's a lot more difficulty resisting the forces at that point. So I'm trying to make the case here that in this area of the turn, I don't want to be in a lower, pronated, weaker position. I would prefer to be in a taller, resupinated, solid position to resist the load. So it makes no sense to me to go to a shorter position into this area of the turn. We would want to maintain our length from the time we get pressure to the new outside ski, the blue line, versus the inside ski, which is the red dotted line. maintaining pressure on the ball of the foot in a tall, long position through the entire turn. At that point, then I may choose, and do choose, to use the idea of pronation. Obviously, if we're resupinating, at some point in the turn we need to pronate. Most people, and this is commonly accepted, if you look at the ski magazines, you'll see people talking about rolling the ankle to get pressure to the new outside ski. They do it in this area of the turn. They pronate, move already into a shorter, weaker, misaligned position, and then try to carry that position through to where the load goes the highest. We found that if I can extend onto the ball the new outside foot here, stay in a long, tall position, at this point, if I pronate at that point, what happens is I release the pressure from that ski. I'm in a tall position, which allows me to absorb and to move across to the new resupinated outside ski into the first phase of the new turn in this area. So already I'm on the ball of my foot in a tall position in the first phase of the turn, moving through the acceleration, and then when the load is highest again and I want to change over to the new ski, I have the position of pronating, letting go of the pressure, moving across into a resupinated position on the new first phase of the next turn. Long, tall, strong. When I'm done with that position, when I'm done resisting the load and want to flip over to the next outside foot, it's very, very simple at that point to let the foot pronate, roll, that releases the pressure, moves me across to the inside of the new turn, and starts me resupinating onto the ball of the new foot to begin the new turn on the outside ski. So we've talked a little bit about the way most people tend to ski, straight to braking, straight to braking, straight to braking. In this type of a turn, through three phases, there's very little braking going on. The ski flips to a new edge, rides, picks up speed. In this area, we're beginning to slow down again. Once we reach that comfortable speed by turning up the hill enough, we just move across to the new outside ski, and it's a very flowing experience. So we're moving from outside foot to outside foot to outside foot to outside foot. Now I know that carving has certainly picked up, and many more people now can leave those railroad track type turns in the hill, and you might see it from the chairlift. But I think you would notice that most people would ski more of a fall line type of skiing when they're carving turns. They tend to be on a longer ski that handles a little bit, it's more stable at a higher speed. But here you'll notice that at this point where the load, if they were to continue to make this turn and finish a turn, the load would go very high here. If they can't handle that load, why wouldn't they be able to handle it? One of the main reasons is that they start their turn with pronation, moving towards a shorter, weaker position, and as the load comes higher in this area of the turn, they realize that their body won't handle it. It's much easier to flip it over to the new outside ski at that point. Unfortunately, they still believe that you have to pronate to get pressure onto the edge, and they're moving again into a weaker position until the load begins to come a little too high for them, and then they just decide to let it come again to the new turn. So they're really skiing phase 2 to phase 2 to phase 2, and as long as they can handle what we call the speed of the hill, they don't have any need to turn or finish the turn any more than that, as long as the ski is stable at the speed that they're able to develop. Obviously on any given hill, the potential speed is pretty much fixed. What happens with most people is that speed, with the type of ski that they're mostly on, with an 18 to 20 meter radius, they really aren't going to go fast enough to be worried about I'm going faster than I feel comfortable with, because the skis nowadays are just so stable.